Hello, I'm Mike Searles, and this is the Comeback Coach podcast. As somebody who might be stuck or suffering right now after perhaps a setback in an area of your own life, health, finances, a relationship, business, career, or maybe all of those combined, you would know the feeling of emotional pain and fear. That's why a discussion on getting through the pain and past the fear is vitally important in relation to making a comeback and getting your life back on track. I've had such a discussion earlier today with my next podcast guest. Let me introduce you to Harrison KLEIN. Harrison knows pain and fear. He explains the story of his early life, how it was a miracle that he was even conceived by his parents, and that's a story you have to hear. And he also puts it in his own words of how he used to be an angry, unhappy, antisocial atheist and a liar. Then one day, he had a sudden and unplanned transformation, which would literally change him and his life and lead him to helping change the lives of so many people across the globe. Harrison KLEIN is an international speaker and writer, specializing in spirituality, metaphysics, life transformations, and the awakening processes. He is the creator of the I Am Effect program and published author of the 4-volume book series titled Amazing, Life-Changing Messages from the Light. And links to all websites mentioned during the conversation with Harrison KLEIN are in the show notes below. Settle back while we join the conversation with our podcast guest, Harrison KLEIN. Well, here's the man himself, Harrison KLEIN. Harrison, I'm so happy to be having this conversation with you, and welcome to the conversation.
Hello, Mike. How are you doing? Thank you for having me. It's great. It's a great honor and a pleasure to be here, and I am pleased and thrilled to be talking to your audience and to you.
Thank you very much. And talking about our audience, so predominantly the people on this podcast are people who are likely to be going through some transition, getting life back on track, making a comeback. They're more than likely somebody who has enjoyed and experienced success to different levels in life, and something has caused them to fall into a rut. They got stuck and they're coming out. And that's the reason why I knew my audience would want to know more about Harrison KLEIN and what you've done in your past, because you've got a very extensive background and interests in spirituality, the metaphysics, the coaching industry. You position yourself as a leading transformational luminary. So many things that we can talk about. The list of people that you've rubbed shoulders with reads like a who's who of who's important in the world. And I think there's so much wisdom that you can contribute. And you've got Einstein over your shoulder there. And actually leads to something, because there it is there, the I Am Effect. And your website is IamHarrisonKlein.com, as opposed to Harrison KLEIN, pre-I Am. What's that about?
The words I am are the two most powerful words in the entire universe, Mike. I mean, if you remember the biblical story about Moses, where he asks God his name, he says, I am that I am. Well, what was put into the physical plane is the words I am, which are the management of all energy. So I is the ability to see, and M is the ability to exist. So I see, I observe, I am. I am an existence that observes, okay? So I am, and those two words are the most powerful words because they manage energy. So what they do is whatever you attach to those words are a signal to the universe to take those attachments out to completion. So when you say I am happy, or you say, and when you say I am happy, you feel light. When you say I am depressed, you feel heavy. So when you say I am successful, you feel buoyant. When you say I am struggling, you feel friction, or you feel difficulty. So the words I am control, whatever follows the words I am controls a state of mind. It is the identity principle. So we get in this world what we are and not what we want. This is really important to understand. So we get in this world what we are, not what we want. And what we are is who we say we are through our I ams. So we experience our lives through the ability to say, I am this, that, or whatever the case may be. And it's the closest thing to your God connection that you can do as a human being. So in the physical realm of humanness, basically I am are the two most important words because they manage every single kind of energy. And any experience that you have comes from some pre-I am that you have thought to yourself at some point in life.
Wow, that's interesting. What comes to mind then, and I'd like to come back to this. I'd like to ask you a question and come back to your answer, which is, you just mentioned we get what we are, not what we want. And so much of the law of attraction that I've studied and read and learnt and know about is very much about setting wants and intentions. So I want to come back to that in a moment so you can clarify that, because I find that very interesting. Now, you have the appearance of a university professor. You've got the professor's beard, and you actually are a university professor and you taught in university. So you just give us the background there. Where did you grow up? What was your upbringing like? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Your family?
All that stuff. Well, at this point, it's somewhat irrelevant, but I grew up, if people are old enough to remember, in the United States that there was a shooting of four kids at a school called Kent State University, which was a world-renowned experience. I went to Kent State University. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, which is a kind of a Midwest city that was famous for steel mills in Ohio. And it housed some world-class universities, world-class hospitals, and basically steel mills. So it was really a working-class town with a lot of rich people who governed the working class. So I come from a Holocaust parental background. My parents were Holocaust survivors. They went through World War II, had probably every heinous crime that man could think of committed against them. My mother being raped, my father being shot, beaten, tortured, all that other kind of stuff many times over, during the Holocaust. And so I'm surprised they could talk about anything else. So they were in a survival mode for a long time. My father and my mother were separated during World War II, and they hadn't seen each other for 8 years. And somehow, by accident, my mother was walking down the street in Munich, Germany, after World War II, and a strange man who she'd never met or seen or known walked up to her and said, "Are you Helen Klein?" with a quizzical look on his face. And she said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "I know a man who keeps your picture above his bed," and a letter to my father, had not seen him for 8 years. And that's how they got back together. And I was the result of that evening.
So, glory be.
Glory be. So in that process, my parents were damaged human beings, having had so many different crimes committed against them. They were damaged, had very bad self-images. They were in survival mode all the time. They came to the United States and into America as immigrants with no skills, because my father, when World War II broke out, he was studying. He was studying to be a rabbi at a university. And my mother, she was a seamstress. She had no education really outside of just being able to sew clothing, basically, and she'd done that all of her life. But she was a seamstress, and I guess they came with no marketable skills to this country except for my mother's seamstressness. My father was, he was a rabbinical student, so but he wasn't a rabbi, so he couldn't even be employed or anything having to do with the rabbinical industry at that point. So he ended up being a factory worker. And, much to his detriment, because that wasn't what he was basically cut out to do, but that's what he had to do to survive, because he came with 2 kids and no money and, no skills that he could market. So during the first multiple years of our experience here in the United States, my father and mother having had been separated for all that amount of time, found that they no longer got along. They were not compatible with each other. And so, having been in survival mode and not being compatible, the house was a war zone. The house that I grew up in was a war zone. And in the early parts of my life, all I grew up with was fighting and, negativity and violence and all those other kinds of things. And one day my father, who was basically a gentle-spirited man, he was soft-spoken, he was very depressed. And my mother was aggressive and angry because of all the time she'd been raped and all the things. She was a beautiful woman, and men, during that period took a lot of advantage of her. And so she was angry. She was very angry continuously, and she was emasculating my father one day in our kitchen. And my father, being a gentle spirit, for the first and only time in his life that I'd ever seen, lost it. He lost all emotional control and became violent with her. And he grabbed her across the throat and he put her up against the wall. And, I, having been, grown up having been 4 or 5 years old at that time, and growing up in a household where there was nothing but violence and anger and fear and survival, I was in a constant state of fear myself and everything else. So when I saw that and I was sitting in the kitchen and all that happened, I said, I don't want to live. I don't want any parts of this. This is life. This is not me. I'm not going to do this. I don't want to have any parts of it. And I shut down. I shut down all of my emotions. I shut down all of my awareness.
How old were you at that stage?
Somewhere between 4 and 5, I think. I don't really remember. I remember the moment, but I don't remember how old I was. Right. So I was 4. I don't think I had yet gone to school, so it had to be under 5. So I shut down all of my awareness, and so I was in a dark place. I went into what today would be diagnosed as autism. So, and I had an autistic experience, and I'm a miracle child because I was in that state for 23 years. Now, in the state of autism, which no autistic person can tell you until they emerge from it, is that basically that's not like the normal kind of existence that you and I are experiencing right now. In autism, I heard only about every third word that people would say. So I was always trying to piece together whatever anybody said by my language skills, whatever they were at the age of 4, Jesus Christ, So I was trying to piece together things. I heard only about every third word, like a bad cell phone. Then my eyes were filled, because I was shut down in awareness, my eyes were filmed. They were covered in film. So everything that I saw was like looking through wax paper or some sort of cellophane. It was not the direct connection that I had. It was some sort of a film. My body was numb. It was like you know how your foot falls asleep? It was like my whole body was like that. I had what Eckhart Tolle calls a pain body. And so whenever anybody came within 6 to 8 feet of me, I experienced stabbing pains in my ribs. And so I couldn't touch anybody. So I wasn't hugged. I wasn't nourished. I wasn't connected to other people. And I had almost no conversation with anybody till I was almost 30 years old. So at one point in my 30th year, or actually it was 28th year, but at one point in my 28th year, I had a mystical experience, and without warning, I was sitting in a chair in Cleveland, Ohio, about 2:00 in the morning. And, without warning, my consciousness was yanked out of my body, and I was sent spinning through the universe in a tube of white light. And, suddenly I was seeing, at a velocity at the speed of light. And I was seeing colors coming at me, patterns coming at me. I was watching planets birth and die. I was watching galaxies spin. And in the background, I heard choirs of angels and, all the things that you would consider as a choir of angels, sort of a thing, unearthly music, nothing that I've ever heard before or since. And it was a very, very unusual thing because the velocity was so fast, and I was actually traveling in a very ethereal astral kind of a place. So I was then, I don't know how long I was within the experience, maybe 2 minutes, could have been 2 years, could have been 2 days, could have been 2 hours, whatever it was. And I was living alone. I had no idea whether I was, days had passed or moments had passed or whatever. But when I was deposited back in my body, there's a miracle. Boom, big thump. And all of my autism was gone. And not only was my autism gone, I also had extrasensory perception. I was clairvoyant, I was clairaudient, and clairsentient. So I could see into the future, into the past. I could see translucently through a lot of different things. I was actually able to see energy in itself in its rawest form. I was actually able to see the pulsations of colors. I was actually able to see into a lot of things that are opaque, and that experience was the most mind-boggling thing. It was crazier than an acid trip or a psilocybin trip, and ayahuasca trip, any of those things. It was as crazy as all those things. And you know what? It stuck with me. So my life turned on a dime. So I came back into the awareness of a human being, or to the greater awareness of a human being with all these extrasensory abilities. And, it just turned my life around. And I learned through my connection of source. And I was an atheist prior to any of that. So it wasn't a God thing. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was fucking crazy. I was autistic, I could hardly speak to anybody. But when I came back, I was completely healed in every way. I was intelligent. My IQ probably went up easily 40 points. I could speak about anything. I had access to every single memory of every moment of my life. And clearly, I could call it up like that. And so my life turned on a dime. And from that point on, I learned that I had a mission. And part of the reason that I was in this state for so many years, this autistic, unaware, crazy state. And I was a despicable human being at that point because of all my experiences. I was a coward. I was a liar. Whatever talking I did do, I was a coward and I was a liar. And any interaction I had with people was coming from the place of hate. So all of a sudden, I was in a place of love, and everything turned around. It's just a 180-degree turn. And, this fire washed over me, a sense of fire and washed over me. And suddenly I was defiant. I was proud. I was an amazing human being, a whole new human being, nothing that I'd ever known before, nothing that I had ever conceived of before. And I was alive for the first time. And the energy that was within me was 100, maybe 1,000 times greater than in my autistic state. And it was like if you were on the platform of a speeding train going by you, and you grabbed a rail on the side of the train and you held on for dear life, and you were, that's what it was like. That's how much energy it felt like. I was holding on for dear life. I'd never known that kind of energy. So it was another experience that, again, the Japanese call that experience a satori. It is a place, what they call a sudden enlightenment. And, my guess is millions of people have had it, but very few people can talk about it. Right. And, so and it's part of the human experience when you go spiritual. It's like a cataclysmic event. Yeah. It's like the Big Bang or an eruption of a volcano. 28 years of suppressed and crazy negative emotions died and also spewed out of me in all directions. That's why I went spinning through the universe. So
at age 28, Harrison, when this event happened, talk about transformational. That, how you've just described it, And it occurred.
Massive transformation.
Massive. Unbeknownst to you, I mean, it's not like something you set up, you predetermined to set up, that you prepared yourself for it. You just described how it happened suddenly. What were you doing at age 28? You described how you were an atheist at that point, and that you were non-communicative, basically, with the human race, that you self-described yourself as rather despicable. What were you doing just prior to that transformational experience?
I was sitting in an overstuffed chair in my apartment. At that point, I was in art school. So I was sitting in an overstuffed chair and I was just sketching into a notebook. It was probably about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was just sketching and there was no warning. It just happened. I don't know exactly how. The moment prior to that, I realized now I had been in pain for all those years. I had been in psychological pain and, disassociated from any part of myself, of any part of my real self. And the moment prior to that thought, as I was in contemplation, and there is a sequence to enlightenment, and in contemplation is the level or the stage right above, right beneath the enlightenment experience. But right at that particular point, I was contemplating, what if everything that I've ever gone through in my entire life was all about love in one form or another? And the word love came up, and I instantly went into the next phase of that stage of being. So, and all those years I had denied love. I'd been a liar. I'd been a coward. I'd been a despicable human being. I hated everyone and hated anything. I couldn't communicate with anybody. I couldn't deal with anybody. Then all of a sudden I had this massive transformation, and suddenly I'm in love with life. Everything is incredible. It's vivid. It's wonderful. It's sensational. I've never seen anything like that. I've never felt anything like that. I've never understood that anything like that could have even existed in my wildest imagination. So,
all right. So there's at age 28. Look, thank you for. Because I asked what was your background, and you said it's irrelevant, or parts of it are irrelevant. But everything I've heard you just say up until now, every word of it is so relevant to me, coming from a position of past pain, and for our listeners. And I'm so grateful. I am so grateful that you've just given us the background. I really appreciate it. Now, let's move forward. Transformed Harrison, enlightened. What came next? What was the next part of it?
The realization that, what I had been given was a gift. What I'd been given was a moment of grace. I don't know why I was chosen or how I was chosen, or if there was anything about that, outside of the fact that I had been in a state of internal examination for 23 years about what my feelings were. And of course, as you get isolated, you get more sensitive to everything around you. Your environment becomes either hostile or wonderful. And in my case, it was hostile. So, and change was the most difficult thing in the world. So, but what I realized after coming out of, or emerging into this new beingness that I was, this nobody self, if you will, the absence of self, what I realized was that, we all come here for a mission. We all are here for a purpose, and not just one purpose, many purposes. The big fallacy that keeps a lot of people stuck is that they have to have, what's my purpose in life? What am I here for? They think they have to have one purpose. You can have many purposes. There's no reason why you can't have lots of purposes, and I have lots. So what I realized was that, I now have an obligation. I'm in a place of love. I'm in a place of extraordinary extra humanity, extra physicalness, and an extraordinary experience. So, and now my position is to help other people navigate this path. So, very few people can explain it the way that I experienced it, and very few people experience it. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know how many people in this world have had these kinds of experiences, but I know that I went crazy for about 2 years trying to find out what the experience was. So when it's not anything that the body or the mind knows, because it's not of the body and it's not of the mind. Mm-hmm. So you're tossed into a whole new realm of being. And what happens is that you are in the unknown. If it were, and it can't be, it's not, I can describe it, but you can't understand it in the same way that I felt it. Right. It's just like, trying to describe what the color blue is to somebody who's been blind all their lives. Right. You can describe all you want, but they get a sense of it, but they don't have the real feeling. Mm-hmm. But the real feeling is basically a place where you are at one with all things. And the energy that you experience is all energy. It's not just your energy, it's all energy. So everything in the world is coming from you. So, other people are you. Everything that you see is an energy field. So you and I are sitting on chairs, right? So there's no such thing as a chair. It's all an energy field appearing as a chair. Yeah. But when you come into this experience of energy, transcendence, energy transcendence, or physical transcendence, you get to understand the chair as energy, not as a chair. Right. So there's a whole other experience. Now, other people are you. So what happens is we're all this one being, and we're just all this one soul communicating with different parts of ourselves. It's like our hand is one part of our body, and our foot's another part. It's still our body, and it's still the one. But the hand doesn't necessarily have to know what the foot is doing, but it knows. It's sensitive enough to understand that it's part of the same thing. So everything that you see, you're a part of. We don't stop at our skin. Human beings do not stop at their skin. Their energy goes beyond that. All energy goes beyond the skin. It's not. This is just a facade that we carry for a little while. Mm-hmm. And when we understand that, basically, we understand that whatever it is that we see that we do not like, we have the power to change. So for you people in transition, you have to understand that each of us is a powerful being, beyond measure. Not something that you can say, okay, well, now I'm five times as powerful as I was last week because I'm stronger, I feel better. But you know what? You do feel better, but you are magnificent. You're like thousands of times more powerful. Most people, religion teaches us, and spirit and society teaches us that we are a body that has a soul within it. It's not the way it is. Truth is, we are a soul that has a body. Right. So the opposite of what you are taught in this physical plane is what is truth, at least from the perspective of anybody who has made a transcendent experience, who has had a transcendent experience.
Let me ask you, Harrison, a question that I've got, and then we're going to move to come back to that point you made earlier about we have what we have as opposed to what we want. A question I have. Okay, so a book that made a significant difference for me was Wallace D. Wattles, The Science of Getting Rich. And in it, he explains there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, the monistic theory. And when I explore deeper, I read and hear energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Can you give us some insight into what that means? I don't understand what that means.
It means that everything is the same energy. There is no difference. So the chair that you're sitting on is the exact same energy that makes up you. Every rock, every piece of wood, every glass, every tree, every air, every molecule that you breathe is all made of energy. Energy is just another word for God, and another word for awareness, and it's another word for consciousness. So God, consciousness, awareness, they're all the same thing. Love, they're all different words for this stuff, this thinking stuff, this intelligence that is full of energy. So It's not just energy itself, it's intelligent energy. And that is what we call God. Yeah. Now the basic thing is that, you know, it's intimate with everything that exists. This intelligence is intimate, infinitely infinite with everything that exists. So it communicates with everything. So if you can imagine all the universe having an intimate connection with something we call God, it's an intelligence that is intimate with you and every other piece of living energy that exists. So when we say nothing can be invented or created or destroyed, basically, we're all the same energy. It's eternal. It's been here forever, and it will be here beyond us forever. There's never been birth. There's never been death to this energy. It just moves from one door to another. That's all it does. You know, it's like John Lennon said, I don't care about death. It's just going in one door and out the other one into another room, you know? So, and that's exactly what it is. So nothing can be created or destroyed. So that means that anything that exists is a substance of that one energy. So, and that substance of that one energy, just according to the intelligence of your infinite experience, is what shapes your life. Now, your soul is not the least bit interested in information because it's omniscient. It knows everything. It is God. What it is interested in is experience because it wants to expand. It wants to grow. The infinity, as far as anybody can understand infinity, which is everything, everywhere, all the time, forever, still wants growth. But it's not ambitious, so it just plays. But in the process of that growth, God is us experiencing. God's experiencing itself through us.
Right.
So we come into this body for God to find out more ways to grow. That's what it is. So
Love it.
He just, yeah. So that's the whole process. So, and every time we grow, we expand the universe. Each one of us expands the universe by our growth. So, and that's the beauty of it. So nothing can be created, nothing can be destroyed because it's the same energy. All it does is take on different forms. The one thing about the energy is that, as I said, it's completely intelligent energy. So it's not just energy, it's intelligent energy.
Yeah.
And that intelligent energy is information. So it means in, and it forms, right? And then it comes into something else, and then it comes into something else.
What about, Harrison, the impartiality of this thinking intelligence stuff, God, whatever we call it? I hear that, read that it for example, it doesn't prefer good as opposed to bad, or it doesn't know the difference between good or bad. It just knows.
Those are not things that this energy has labels on. The energy doesn't have labels. Those are human labels. Those are the human experience. There's a very different. So when we come into the human body, we have agreed to experience duality, if you will. Duality, right and wrong, good and bad, evil and good, higher, lower, left, right, all those things. In the enlightened state or in the energy state, there's no such thing. It's infinite. So there's no good and bad, there's no right and wrong, there's no evil or anything. It just loves. That's all it does, is love. Everything. So, it loves the same as the sun shines on an evil person, it also shines on a good person, right? There's no difference. So there isn't any difference. The thing that we call evil, those are just labels that we have. The good and bad, those are just labels that we have to define where we want to grow within this human body experience. That's all that it is. Yes. And so the truth is, the more you evolve as a human being, the less those labels mean anything. Those labels mean anything when you're in a base experience, when you're physical and you're dense. When you're dense, you make judgments. When you're dense in your mind, you resist everything that goes on. When you are light, enlightened, or unburdened, there's no resistance. It just happens. It's just a movement. It's just a flow of energy. So there is none of that. So there's no judgment or anything. The end of judgment is the beginning of love. And the beginning of love is the connection with eternity, is your connection with eternity. And you begin to viscerally feel eternity. There's no space out there, what we consider, this universe, which is infinite amounts of space and stars and galaxies and all that kind of stuff. That's not out there. There's only in here. That's, the universe is in here, not out there. So,
thanks, Harrison. What we're going to talk about a little bit soon is you've got an event coming up in April, which you're organising. It's a huge online streaming event. We're going to come to that. For the listeners, it's called Small Shifts, Big Changes Summit. 50 plus personal development and business coaches over 2 or 3 days over the Easter break. So we'll come back. So I want to hear more about that, and I think our listeners will want to know more about that too. So let's just come from the position now. One of our listener is somebody stuck in a rut, not enlightened. They haven't gone through what you went through at age 28. They're probably not necessarily dense and closer to being atheist or willing to believe if only they could see proof, right? What's the practical advice that you can tell them, give them, advise them, share with them, help them get from where they are right now in the next 24-hour period or period of time, actually space-time, I'd love to talk to you about. We'll probably come back to that on another conversation because I know you've got theories on space-time and I really want to learn about that. There's this person stuck. What advice, what conversation would you have with them to help them change, transform and transition? First steps to getting out of the rut.
First, you have to understand that change only happens in 4 ways. Every kind of change is a derivative of these 4 ways. 1, your self-image, how you regard yourself, what you think about yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you visualize yourself, and how you visualize yourself in the world, and what relationship you've created to the world, to yourself, the point of awareness. Second way to change, through belief system. Every time you change your belief, you change your world. Every time you change your world, in order to have a new belief, you have to take on new information. You have to take on new things that you believe to be true. And the word believe means to be, which means to exist. And it comes from the derivative leave, comes from the derivative of the word live. So I be, which means I exist, I am. And leave means live. I am live. I am life. So every time you believe anything, basically your belief system, you are living whatever it is conclusion you have made. So whatever it is you desire, you think you believe, you actually live that. It comes through you as the energy, as an energy. So you believe. So every time you change your belief, you change your world. Everything around you changes. It may not be instantaneous. It may be a transition, but it changes. So you want to get out of a rut. You want to change your belief system. You want to get out of a rut. You want to change your self-image, because as you see yourself more successful, you will become more successful. Okay. You cannot override your self-image that you carry, but you can create a new self-image. And that's the whole way to get out of your experience right now. Third way is cataclysmic. That is what I went through. It's a cataclysmic experience. It's a huge shock, but you come from the shock place into a brand new world. So everything becomes more vivid, more vital, more incredibly energetic, more significant, and you're not in the same world you were prior to that moment. There's no more spiritual. There's no more human density. There's only spiritual luminosity. So so you change your world by becoming luminous or by a cataclysmic change. For a lot of people, you've heard of these people who hit rock bottom, and then from the rock bottom, they go to become billionaires, millionaires, sages, actors, famous, whatever the case may be. They were homeless once, and then the next thing you know, a couple of years later, they are at the top of every industry that they've ever achieved or wanted to. That's a cataclysmic change. They went to the place where they suffered so much that their body rejected everything in it and lost identity of all sorts. So they came into a new experience, into the unknown. And from the unknown, they were connected with their awareness, and they began to navigate that awareness, the hero's journey. That is the dark night of the soul to the hero's journey. The hero's journey is always about rejecting what is and creating what is new. It is going through the adversity to be competent into the new.
Love it.
Okay. And the fourth way that we change, which is probably the easiest and probably the most prevalent that's happening right now on the planet, is inspiration. So, we get inspired by things. And if we get inspired by things, we act on those things. And as we act on those things, we create new experiences, new information, new cognitions. So I am a metacognition coach at this point. So, we talk about metacognition. That is the greater cognition than the cognitive biases that we walk around with. So do you want to change your self-image, change your belief system, go to rock bottom, or go to a place where you're so shocked that you don't know what's happening, and you're taking a big risk, you're falling over the edge of a cliff. But it's like, if you survive that, you learn to navigate a whole new world. And then the fourth way is to be inspired, to continuously feed yourself and nourish yourself with new information, inspiring things that move you to new actions, to new beingness, to new information, new love. Those are the four ways to change.
I love it. Self-image, belief, your belief system, cataclysmic. Thank you. Not a word I use every day. And maybe I will from now on. And inspiration, which is what you're doing right now, inspiring our listener and listeners. And so I'm speaking. We're listening to an enlightened one, and I'm reminded of a seeker of truth and speaking to a master, an enlightened master, and the seeker of truth.
There is no personal enlightenment. It's universal enlightenment. We're all enlightened. It's just a matter of recognizing to the extent of what life is. Yeah.
Okay. That's a discussion. Yeah, thank you. We're going to talk about that on another conversation if we can meet with you again, because I think that's something we'd love to do. The student says to the teacher, "What's it like be enlightened?" And the master says, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." What's the chop wood and carry water for you?
The question then becomes, why do you want to be enlightened? So you have to have a big why. I wanted out of this pain that I was in for such a long time, and I wanted my awareness back. But I had no idea that I could get that. My awareness was so much greater than the density that I was. So, before enlightenment, I was a despicable liar. And I was a coward. I had no fire in me at all. I had no ambition. But after my enlightenment, I was the same core human being, but I was able to change every other part of myself. So yes, before was that I read a lot of books, that I looked for information, that I was connected to knowledge and uplifting kinds of things. No, I wasn't in any way uplifted. I was connected to information, and I was accumulating information. I still now accumulate information. I still now look for a lot of beautiful things. Yeah. I still now, am a seeker of trying to find out what's going on. What is the truth in my environment and in my life and in everything that goes on around me. So those are the things. Before I was enlightened, I was somebody who was also, wanted to know. I was somebody who wanted to understand. I couldn't go through that situation. After enlightenment, I still want to know and I still want to understand. That part of me hasn't changed. The part of me that is consistent and eternal is still the same than it was. I was just in a different form at that point. But my interests are still the same. My values are still the same. I love teaching. I love to teach or be a student. I love to travel. I love to, go places. I wanted new experience. I went across the United States back and forth by myself more than once. What else did I do? I wanted to write, so I learned how to write. I journaled. I kept records of what I experienced, though they were pretty irrelevant. But I got into the habit of record keeping in a strange kind of way. And
talking
today
about writing, excuse me, Harrison. Talking about writing, you have a published book. Is that the one over your shoulder? The I Am Effect?
Yeah, that's a published program. I have published books. I have 4 published books called Messages from the Light.
That's right.
And you can get them on Amazon. Yeah, you can get them on Amazon.
And that's a whole series.
It's a whole series. It's 4 volumes, and I am working on another book, and I wrote 3 other books that are not published, but that I use with my classes, with the people I teach directly. So one of them is the 11 Principles of Being, which is part of the core of what we're talking about now. Yes. So the Principles of Being. So that's one. That's a metaphysical exploration, if you will, and insights. So a series of insights.
And do you work one-on-one with clients at this stage?
Absolutely.
Sure. So if somebody, do you have a certain kind of client you prefer to work with? And if someone wanted to reach out to you and ask you about working with you, how would they go about that?
Well, you can make an appointment with me if you want to do that, or you can connect with me on Facebook, Harrison Klein. Or you can, if you want to speak to me directly, if you're interested in working with me through mentorship of some sort or entering one of my classes, you can make an appointment on my calendar, which is Calendly, CALENDLY.com, then /Harrison, HARRISON, then underscore Klein, KLEIN. So it's calendly.com /Harrison underscore Klein, KLEIN.
I'll include that link and links to your Facebook page, to your website in the show notes, so people can click, those who wish to reach out and know more about you and your books and your programs. Sure. This segues now perfectly into the project that you have underway at the moment, which is the Small Shifts, Big Changes Summit. No pun intended. Enlighten us about Small Shifts, Big Changes Summit.
Okay. Well, Small Shifts, Big Change, the purpose of it is to show that little things, make big differences in people. So it's the little things. We talk about inspiration, right? No mountain, every single mountain that exists on the planet is created by little grains of sand, little pieces of dirt, right? So every time a little piece of dirt combines with another piece of dirt, with another piece of dirt, pretty soon, if you keep that up, you get a mountain. Right. So a small shift can make all the difference in the world. I have many, many stories of, one small sentence or word that somebody has spoken to somebody else that have changed their lives. Yes. Whether they were suicide or whether they were in transition because of a job situation, because of, their child oppression, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's just a little piece of insight that makes all the difference. And so this event that I'm creating, that I have created, called Small Shifts, Big Changes, is about some of the world's greatest luminaries who will give stories and inspiration and narratives about, people who have changed their lives on one or two very, very simple tips.
Right.
And also they are every single person that has spoken, that is going to be speaking on that situation, has agreed to give 3 tips on ways to change your life.
Right.
That they have used, and so on and so forth. So it's small shifts, big changes. .com, but we haven't, we start promoting it on the 24th of March, but the dates of the event are April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th online. Small shifts, big changes event.
And the fee is?
Free.
Oh,
Yay.
don't we love it? We love it. Fee with an R dropped in becomes free. And
And every single speaker, every single luminary is going to give something away.
Wow,
So
wonderful. One of those speakers I know is John DeMartini, correct?
That's correct. My buddy. John DeMartini is my longtime buddy. He's been a friend of mine for 15 years. We have dinner together. We talk on the phone. We, kind of hang out whenever we're in the same area. So.
And is it true you've shared the stage in the past with the Dalai Lama?
No, I have not shared stage with the Dalai Lama.
Okay, I've been misled. All right then. But you certainly, John DeMartini.
I did speak at the same place that the Dalai Lama spoke.
Well, that's good enough. Was it on the same day?
No.
Okay. It's a good enough connection for me. I'm going to leave it up where I've left it on a post. Now, there's something I want to just summarise about Harrison KLEIN. Okay, so actually, let me just preempt it. Something came to mind when you're sharing your earlier childhood and the story of your parents, Harrison. And there's a book that I recommend occasionally, and others do recommend it too, particularly when somebody we're working with needs help with perspective. And that's Viktor Frankl's A Search for Meaning, a book I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Familiar,
yeah. So when you were explaining your parents' story through the Second World War, Viktor Frankl's experience and book came to mind as well.
Yeah.
Perspective. I'm so glad that your parents, after 8 years, met and your dad's twinkle in the eye became you sometime later, and that we've had this opportunity to meet with you.
I will tell you, I'm the fastest sperm in that group.
You will
beat out 2 million other sperms.
Hey, you get the winner's trophy, buddy. And the other thing I like about Harrison KLEIN, even before this conversation, is checking out a few of your sites and your Facebook page, is that you're a fun guy. You've come from this past of pain. And I think you've only, rightfully so, because you've shared just the scrapings of pain.
Yeah.
Fear was another word I latched onto that you mentioned a couple of times.
Sure.
Pain and fear. And do you mind if I ask, what age are you now?
What age? I'm 7 decades.
You're in your 70s. So, okay, at age 28, a transformational change that couldn't have been guessed. It happened because it was meant to happen, for reasons we or you may never totally know why. Maybe you do, but and some 40 plus years later, my audience at the Comeback Coach podcast gets to experience you, and you've got that appearance where I want to jump through the screen and give you a man hug. That's the feeling. Yeah, let's do it. A virtual man hug, mate. And I wish I could grow a beard like that, because I don't know, it just makes you look so sophisticated as well. All right, Harrison. Looking good, mate. Looking good. It's been a pleasure, and I know that our listeners, particularly those who right now needed one of those 4 stages or hinges on the gate, help them pass through what they're going through: self-image, belief, to what? Cataclysmic
change.
Yes, and inspiration. And I don't know about our listeners and listener. I've been inspired by this conversation with you, and I'm going to be leaving links in the show notes for people to find out more about what we've discussed. And again, Harrison KLEIN, thank you so much for joining us and joining in this conversation.
It's been a great pleasure and great fun. And Mike, keep doing the things you're doing, because you're helping a lot of people in that process. And I know that anyone who connects with you, connects with this show, I mean, I know it's not an easy thing. It's difficult to be able to connect with people at a deep level, at a heart level. And so my parting words to everybody out there is give yourself permission to live an extraordinary life. Do the things that make a transition for other people. There's 2 ways to have happiness. One is the first, where you internally find your happiness. And you're very, very welcome to have that anytime, any place, anywhere. It's just a decision to be happy. The second one is, once you get happy, you have to make other people happy. So the good thing is that if you are willing to make other people happy now, it highly increases the ability for you to be happy right now. So,
I love it. I love it, and I love you, my man. Thank you again for joining the conversation.
My pleasure. I'm so glad you asked me to come, and I'm so glad that I've been here. So that I'm here, and so good luck. Give yourself permissions to live an extraordinary life. That's all there is. Woo!
Yeah, terrific. We're gonna put that in capitals and bold font type in the show notes. That's the parting words from Harrison KLEIN. And to you, our listener, thank you for listening and joining in this episode of the Comeback Coach podcast. Until next time, this is Mike Searles, your host, the Comeback Coach, signing off.